Hey everybody, welcome to Difference Makers. My name is Tyler Warner. I'm the pastor of Calvary Chapel in Trussville, Alabama. I'm so glad you're here joining us on BGTV. We are motivating and inspiring you to live the life that God has called you to live. Today, we're going to be leaving behind comparison, and we're going to start focusing on our own progression and moving forward and seeing how high we can really go if we put our minds to it. But before we do that, I want to remind you about ironworks.media. This is something we're cooking up over at Calvary Chapel, Trussville. We are building the premier online resource network for the Christian church. BGTV is one of our helpers in that regard, and we're so grateful for them. We've got podcasts there. We've got books that are available. Just released a new book called The Desolation of Israel. I'm really excited about this one. It's a theology book. And we also just had our Ironworks Israel conference, where we spent a whole weekend doing Bible studies about Israel and what the Bible has to say about that subject. It's a lot, by the way, if you want to go check that out. You also can join our mailing list there, and you can get 2 free ebooks right away, and you can be up to date on all the new things that we've got coming out. We have another book launch coming up this November. You're not going to want to miss that one, I promise you. We'll talk about that more when we get a little closer to it. But that's all on ironworks.media. You can also find out more about the church at calvarychapeltrussville.com. And don't forget also, as you're watching this now, to give this video a like, and I'll tell you how to comment on it by the time we finish up here. So at the time of recording, we are getting close to Independence Day. We're getting close to the 4th of July, which is one of my favorite holidays. I'm a very patriotic man. I love my country. I love living here. I love the flag, and I just hung an American flag outside my own house for the first time. And, you know, it's a great place to live. We have such freedom here to pursue everything that God has for us. You know, I believe, according to the Word of God, every single one of us has a calling from God, a gift from God, a purpose for which He has created us, works prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. And in our country, we have freedom like nowhere else. And I've been a few places, all right? I've been around the world. Like nowhere else can you do exactly what God has called you to do without anybody harassing you. In fact, because of that freedom, there are certain callings that could only be lived out in the United States of America. And yet, this thing that we've called the American dream really comes under an awful lot of attack and scrutiny here. And I want to talk about this briefly at the beginning. This is going to go somewhere spiritual. But first of all, there's a bit of a history lesson and a patriotic thought for us to have here. People say things like, well, the American dream is dead, and it's really the American nightmare. And it's like every movie is showing how, you know, there's really no way to climb in this place. And the way this is always framed is, you know, you want to go live the American dream. Well, we're not all going to be billionaires. You know, there's always going to be people that have more than you. You want to work as hard as you can, but you're never going to have as much money as those billionaires. You're never going to have as much money as those guys that really run the world, or you'll never be able to achieve as much as this guy who had a better start than you, or whatever it is. You've heard this before, right? We can't all be CEOs. We can't all be champions. We can't all be presidents. And maybe this is a reaction to what I heard when I was a kid, which is everybody's a winner and everybody's nobody's a loser, and everybody just needs to be happy and feel good about themselves all the time. But what that really is, first of all, speaking as a countryman of yours now, is to misunderstand what the American dream was all about in the first place. If you go look back to the early 1900s, you know, when the immigrants were first coming to America, and we were first talking about things like the American dream, what that meant was you will get the chance to determine your own life. That's the dream. The dream is not, I'm going to become the next CEO of a Fortune 500 company. The dream was, I'll be able to own my own house. I'll be able to work a job and keep the money. I'll be able to pursue whatever I want to do. I can climb as high as I want, and no one can stop me. That's the American dream, is not being number one at whatever you choose to do. It's having the opportunity to compete in the game. Do you see the difference? It's not that we all get the chance to get first place. It's we all get the chance to run in the race. That rhymed. Do you like that? That's how pastors do it. It's not that we all get first place. We all get the chance to run in the race. That was the dream. And you still see this to this day as immigrants come to the United States of America. They're not planning to come and be the first generation. I'm going to be the richest man in the world. Some guys have done that, and be president. What they are is, I'm going to come here and I'm going to work some menial job that's probably beneath my skill level so that I can make enough money to have a house and a place for my family. I can send my kids to school. I'm going to make sure that they work hard so that when they go to school, they'll be able to become doctors or lawyers or businessmen or whatever it is. They'll do well. Maybe they move us all up as a family to, upper middle class or whatever it is. Now they can send their kids to better schools, and those kids will maybe rise a little higher. Do you see the generation generational thinking there. That's the American dream. It's self-determination. I'm coming from Russia. I'm coming from Africa. I'm coming from wherever, where you don't even get a chance to do what you want. There's a lot of people that come here and they say, just give me a chance to try. Just let me at it. Let me see how good I can be. That's the American dream. Owning your own home, having a job where you keep the money and you can try whatever you want and your kids have a better shot. That's important because there's a lot of people who desire to see the destruction of the United States that try to prey on your envy and prey on your bitterness and disappointment to make you feel like, what's the point of even trying since you can't be Elon Musk or whatever it may be. However, we're going to move this into the realm of the spiritual here because that attitude, as it's just aimed at the country, I think it's a good illustration for all of our lives. Paul told the Corinthian church that they were foolish to compare themselves to one another. He said it's ridiculous for you to do that, as if God gave more to one person and less to another, and that's something that ought to make you upset, the disparity, as we like to say. And there's an old adage that comparison is the thief of joy. And that's totally true. Where you just can't be happy with what you have because somewhere somebody has more than you. Never mind that you've got more than somebody else, or you're more successful than somebody else, or you're better looking than somebody else, or you're a better musician than somebody else. If there's somebody better than you, that makes you feel small. Even if you are successful. This is the crazy thing. The internet has really done this where you can find like a 5-year-old child playing some amazing, shredding guitar solo from the top of the neck all the way down. And you can think to yourself, why do I even bother? That's a comment I give to people sometimes if I hear them sing. And I like to sing, but I'm no opera singer, let's put it that way. And I hear somebody just belt it out and it just feels so natural and the beautiful vibrato. And I say, okay, I guess I'm never singing again. After seeing that, it's like, why would I want to even try? But that's a joke, but it can really sink into your soul if you're not careful. All the things that you've overcome, the struggles from when you were a kid, the hardships in school, maybe the dumb decisions you made that you've had to build back from, or the sicknesses, or whatever it is, all those things that ought to make you feel proud, ought to make you feel good about yourself. You see somebody else that ended up a little more than you, higher than you, better than you, and you start to feel small, which is ridiculous. That's not the way that God intends us to live. And I know this isn't the way God intends us to live because we see this in the New Testament. Jesus told Peter when they were on the shore of the Sea of Galilee after the resurrection, he told Peter, one day you're going to be stretched out and taken to a place you no longer want to go. And he's telling Peter, you're going to die for me. You're going to be crucified for me. And Peter looks over at John and he says, oh, Lord, what about this man? And he's kind of saying, hey, if that's what you're doing for me, what are you going to do for John? And Jesus told Peter, suppose I want him to live until I return. What is that to you? You follow me. Jesus said, maybe I want to have John live forever. What do you say to that, Peter? He says, it's none of your business what I'm going to do through somebody else, how much or how little. You follow me. So I'm here to tell you, it is not your job to grade yourself in comparison to somebody else's calling or to somebody else's life. God is going to look at how well you have done with what you have been given, whether it's 10 talents, 5 talents, 1 talent, you know the parable. You must not be bitter, but you've got to learn to judge your life on its own merits, not to say, well, I like to draw, but I'm never going to be Walt Disney. So what? Are you going to be great as you know how to be? You got to learn how to judge your own life, not by comparing to other people. The American dream was a dream of progress in a person's life, progress towards success. Give me the chance to try. I'd rather go out to California with nothing, live on the ground, and pan for gold and see if I can get rich. Give me the freedom to try that. That's what it means. Having your own home, the opportunity to study and to learn, a job that you can labor at and nobody's going to stop you. And America has always been at its best when we're trying our best to give everybody the opportunity to try. And if you're a real man, I would say, you want the opportunity to try and to fail. I want the opportunity to fail. Because if I can't lose, then what's the point of doing this in the first place? But likewise, just as how the original thought here was not, we're all going to be number one, it's give me the chance to run and maybe do better this time. I might not win today. And look, if you've ever tried to do 5Ks or triathlons as I've done or anything like that, you show up and it doesn't matter how ready you feel. There's somebody there that you take one look at him and you go, that guy's winning. That's the guy that's going to win. You can look at how he's stretching and you can know he's going to win. You see the bike they've got and like, man, I might not even be I might be stronger than that guy, but his bike is going to be faster even if he doesn't go very hard. So that's why they tell you to focus on not are you going to get first place, are you going to get your personal best? And I think that's a good approach to taking our life. You need to look at your progression as your mark of success. Not have I beaten everybody else, but have I gotten better? So let's talk about maybe trying to get in shape. It's an important thing to look at everybody's life. You might look online and you see these fitness gurus, and most of them are on steroids, fellas, first of all. Let me just throw that out there for you. Don't get too beat up about it. But their biceps are huge. Or maybe they can run 1,000,000 miles, or they can swim to the bottom of the ocean and come back up. And you think, why do I even bother going to the gym? And you kind of think, in comparison to that guy, I look terrible. And then maybe somebody compliments you and you can't even receive it because you're like, oh man, you look great. Like, no, I don't. I don't look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. The question then is, well, who does? Nobody does. If you've lost weight, if you've gotten some muscle, if you've gotten better at your sport, you're now sinking those threes, even if you're not making every single one. Okay, that's progress, and you should be proud of that, and that's how you should be grading yourself. Yeah, there's billionaires out there. There's people that, they buy islands. This old Steve Harvey joke saying Michael Jackson had giraffe money, right? See, there's some people that they have that. But what about you? Have you now come to the place where you can own your own house? Where you can own your own car? You don't have to worry about where your bill money is going to come through every month? If you've been there, and never mind, I'm just waiting for the check to come in. You don't know where the money's going to come from to pay for that heating bill. And you get to the place where you don't even worry about that anymore. You got to be grateful for that. So what if you don't have as much as him? Are you doing better? Have you improved? Have you gotten wiser? Have you gotten shrewder in these things? Myself, I'm a pastor and I'm a preacher. I could get real discouraged if I wanted every time I look around and I see a mega church. And I'll tell you what, I do not resent those guys for having those large churches and those amazing ministries. I think it's a remarkable thing that we live in the day and age where there are the largest churches the world has ever known. That's pretty special. But I'm not the one pastoring one of them. And I could get really beat up by that and just start to say, what's the point of this? And show up to our Sunday morning with our congregation and start to look down on it. Or maybe our worship team isn't as slick as these guys over here, or our programs are no good. And this can be hard because people leave churches and tell you, I love the church and we love you and you're so great, but you don't have a youth ministry, or your children's ministry doesn't have this and that. And to which you can only say, well, I can't. We don't have the resources for it. And if people keep leaving, we're never going to get it. That's hard. But in reality, that's no way to look at it. There's no way to say somebody else is doing better. That means I'm failing. That means, what are we doing? Our church started with 7 people in a hotel. Now we're meeting in our own space. We've got 3 or 4 units. We've got a great sounding worship team. We stream online. We've got, triple digits of people coming now. That's success. And if I were to get raptured right now, I would be confident that God would tell me, well done. You did what I called you to do. Forget what I called him to do. Forget what I called that pastor to do. Have you done what I'm asking you to do? So you've got to focus not on winning the lottery, but on progressing towards the target, because that's where true success is to be found. Isn't it cool when you go to the gym, maybe, and I mentioned basketball a minute ago, and you want to play a pickup game with somebody, and he doesn't look like he's particularly, great at basketball. Maybe he's a little older or something, and you say, hey, well, you want to come join the game? And this guy just starts cooking folks, man. He's crossing you over, and he's sinking them from way back, and, he's getting these and one and blocking shots, and you go, whoa, where'd this guy come from? In that moment, do you think that that guy should be upset that he's not Michael Jordan? No, he can be proud and say, hey, I'm competing with people that are real life that I'm seeing and I'm doing well. That's a good thing to have. In the same way, you're playing music and somebody goes, hey, can I grab that guitar? And they start to play and they're just playing real well on that guitar. Blues guitarists always impress me. I've never learned much blues myself, but whenever they play, there's just something about that makes it seem skilled to a guitar player. That's why the longer you play guitar, the more likely you're going to play blues, is because it just sounds and seems very skilled. Some guy doing that, at his local, coffee shop or whatever, that guy should never feel badly about himself that he didn't make it big and become the next American Idol. He should be proud of what he's done. And the same thing for you. You wouldn't make either one of those guys feel bad, would you? You would never come to somebody else and say, hey, your wife's pretty cute, but she's not like some of those supermodels that you see, or somebody I saw in that music video the other day, or this girl on Instagram. You would never say that to somebody. And yet those thoughts will creep into people's heads. Like you're going to be able to get one of those girls anyway, you know what I'm saying? But it's about progress towards the target and doing well in what it is. So this is that bitterness that comes in, that envy, that I'm not him, I'm not her, I'm not there, I don't have that much, I don't have what they have. You get a new car and you're excited about it for 5 minutes until you see somebody with a shinier car. Man, you got to learn to let that go. Just be glad with what God has given you and what he's called you to do. So that's how we shouldn't frame it, and that's maybe some tips to help, but here's how I want to kind of bring it to an end here. We got some time. So This is the question to ask yourself. How high could you fly in this one life that you've been given? How high could you go? How far could you go? It's like that Moana song, right? How far I'll go. How strong could you be? How well could you perform? How much could you generate? And as I've said, referring back to this illustration that we're carrying through, immigrants come here because they just want the chance to try. They're willing to work in the slums. They're willing to, open up a laundromat. They're willing to, work in the fields because they say, this is my chance to try. I don't plan on doing this forever. And even if I do, my kid's not going to do it forever. I want the chance to go for it. I want to see how well I could do if I'm given the freedom to try. In my own life, that's how I want to think about myself. That's how I want to be able to think about my own life. Not looking at these heroes of the faith, the Billy Grahams, the Chuck Smiths of the world and say, will I ever be like that guy? No, because that's not my calling. My calling is to be what God has asked me to do. But in that domain, what God has asked me to do, I want to see how high I can fly and how far I can go in what God has called me to do. So I'm going to use my own illustrations here. Replace it with what God has asked you to do. I like writing books. I just released a new one. I got another one coming up here. There's always a process you go through. You're excited about the idea. You start working on it. You hit in the middle, and then you realize this is dumb. I don't ever want to do this. Who would ever read something like that? But you're all the way in, so you push to the end, and usually by the time you're done, you're thinking, okay, this is all right. This is going to be something. Then you release it to the world, and you're all excited, and then a few minutes later, you go, that really wasn't that good. But the next one will be better. And there's something to that. You always want to improve the next time. But for my own self, I don't ever want to say, well, I'm not selling books like Stephen King. I'm not selling books like, your favorite Christian author, C.S. Lewis or whatever, and only a few people have read it. That could stop me and say, I'm never going to be like that. Or I could say, let's see how good we can get. Let's see how good these books can become. Let's see what level of theology I'm capable of writing. Because this is part of what God's called me to do. So I have divine permission to go for it, man, and see how good could these books be. And if I do that for 50 years, man, who knows what could happen, right? That's part of my life. Or to be a pastor. I want to be a preacher. And although I told you I'm not a megachurch pastor, I probably never will be because most guys are not. But in my mind, I go, but I am called by God to be a pastor. I am called by God to be a church planter and a preacher. So let's see how far we can go with this. Let's see what can we build at Calvary Chapel, Trustville. What other churches could we plant? What other people could I disciple? What kind of messages could I deliver? How good of a preacher could I become? How good at Greek or Hebrew could I become? This is all something that God has approved of in my life that I could look at somebody else and say, well, I'll never be D.A. Carson. Okay, so what? God has something else for me. And the Lord wants you to say, I want you to do whatever God has asked you to do with all of your heart. Even in my own life, I'm a musician. I like to play guitar. And that's one of the things that I'm kind of speaking to myself here because I've let that go in recent days of my life. I broke my wrist last year, so that was kind of difficult. But it's like, all right, I'm never going to be a rock star. Thought I was for a while, but I'm never going to be a rock star with people, headbang into my hot tunes, right? It's never going to happen. But what about this? How good of a guitar player could I be? How well could I elevate our worship team here? Maybe I could write a couple good songs that would bless other people in the churches. That's certainly possible. And who knows if I chase after it with all my heart. I want to still pursue athletics. I'm getting a little older. I'm not in high school anymore. But it's like I still enjoy running. I still enjoy playing sports. I still enjoy races. And I still enjoy lifting. Well, what could be done in that regard? You think God's going to stand back and say, you should only be focused on reading your Bible? No, the Bible tells us, live your whole life. Do it all to the glory of God. Trying to maximize your life in every single category will be so satisfying if you can let go of that foolish comparison and that envy towards other people. So in your business, in your marriage, with your kids, in making your house look nice, man, that's something you learn as you're an older man. The older you get as a man, the more envious of other people's yards you start to get. And other people, oh man, I want to put the bricks around my flower beds like that. And I want to paint my fence because no one else has painted their fence. Go for it, man. Go for it. But stop letting yourself get beaten down because you are not what somebody else is. Especially in your calling with Christ. There really is no limit. You don't know what it is. You might say, well, I'll never be a billionaire. Well, who knows? How do you know that? Because you got a slow start? If God has called you to pursue business and to try to fund the kingdom of God, you don't think that God is going to give you more if you are faithful with the little? Doesn't the Bible teach us that? Don't you know that if you're, well, I'm never going to be as great a mother as she was, or I'm never going to be as good a husband as him? Why not? You don't know that. Pursue it just without worrying so much about where you end up. You focus on the right now and try to do your best and see how high you can fly, because you don't know. And there's always negative people coming into your life trying to beat you down and tell you'll never get there. You'll never lose that weight because I couldn't and I'm better than you. You'll never finish that book. You'll never make that painting. You'll never write that song. You'll never plant that church. You'll never give a sermon like that. You'll never see revival come. You don't know. If God has called you to do it, go for it and leave the envy behind. Comparison is the thief of joy. There's a great book by a guy named Kent Hughes that I'll recommend to you, and this is going to be a perpetual recommendation on Difference Makers. It's called Liberating Ministry from the Success Syndrome. And it really is what I'm talking about today, about being faithful, not being successful, so-called. I think you can include those words kind of together, but the way he describes it, it's great. It's all about serving the Lord and waiting for the judgment seat of Christ when he will make his judgments. Why don't you find out what you could be if you really threw yourself into the effort and the planning and the discipline of whatever endeavors you're working on? Why not find out? Find out how good you could be. Find out how successful you could be. Find out how big that church could grow. Yeah, we're not tied to the numbers, but why not? Find out how much money you could make. Find out how shredded you could get in that gym. Why not? It's all to the glory of God. And if you give him all the praise and you're only focused on living it today and not trying to compare yourself to somebody, not trying to beat somebody, so you ever meet these folks, like they can't get excited about something unless they're beating somebody else. Leave that aside. Get your joy from Jesus, and then everything that you do, Ecclesiastes said God has already approved it. He's already approved what you do. Forget other people. What about yourself? And there's some of y'all who hear this, and I know there's a few because it's very popular to say right now, is to say, you can't say things like that because you don't know somebody's background. Maybe they grew up in a poor neighborhood, or maybe their parents were crazy, or maybe they've got some sickness, or maybe they're getting started later in life, or maybe they're part of some privileged class that you identify, or maybe they're not privileged or whatever it could be. So it's just simply not fair to talk about that. That is a loser mentality, and it is not worthy of a Christian. The world is full of struggles and difficulties. All right, but to look down on yourself because you might not be able to do as good as somebody else. They talk about Michael Phelps. Remember Michael Phelps? Michael Phelps was the guy that won 8 gold medals for the U.S. in swimming one year. I remember watching it. It was the coolest thing to see. Well, I read a book about him, and they said, what makes Michael Phelps so great? First of all, he works incredibly hard, etc. But they say he also has a body that is naturally tuned towards swimming. His legs are kind of short, his arms are kind of long, and his hands and feet are huge. It's like you couldn't design a better swimmer. So because he threw himself into that and was naturally good at it, I could work as hard as Michael Phelps. I'll never be as good as him because his threshold is higher. But am I going to get bitter about that? Of course not. If I've maximized what I could do, I should be proud of myself. Every quitter says somebody else is going to do better than me. You might not make billions, but if you work hard, you don't think that you'll make more? You might not be a bodybuilder, but you don't think that if you go to the gym every day, you might get in better shape? You might not pastor a mega church, but if you're faithful to those people, you don't think that you're going to have a ministry that God will approve on that final day? Try to find out what your life could be, and you'll love it, I promise. When you put your joy in Jesus and what he's asked you to do, rather than in the results. And it's not that results don't matter, but if you're always comparing yourself to somebody else, some folks, they'll win the race, and then they'll check their comparison to the national score. And they might win the national score, and they compare it internationally. And then they compare that score to everybody throughout time. It's like, are you looking for somebody to beat you? Because if you are, you're always going to find one. Just do your best in all things. Demand only the chance to try, and you'll have it. And then give it all you've got. Love your obstacles. Love your hurdles. They're just going to be a part of your story. If people say, well, I accomplished this, but you come in and say, I accomplished this in spite of this and that, then you say, wow, that's pretty impressive. We talk about Vice President J.D. Vance, who was, raised his book, Hillbilly Elegy. He was raised in the mountains of Appalachia, a story like a lot of people that I know, friends that I knew growing up. And he's able to rise to where he is right now. That's more impressive, isn't it, than somebody that was given every privilege and every advantage? Friend, don't look at those things as deal breakers, but just as an extra piece to add some flavor to your story later. And I guarantee, if you live like this, if you go for it and you don't let your comparison and envy get in the way, you'll surprise yourself. And you'll look back one day and say, I never thought this was possible. And meanwhile, there's going to be your Heavenly Father looking back and smiling at you and saying, I knew what it was possible, and that's why I called you to do it. This is Difference Makers. Thank you so much for watching today. I hope that you will be able to get that out of your head, that since I'll never be as good as so-and-so, I can't accomplish this. We are trying to inspire and motivate you to live the life God has called you to live in all of its aspects. I invite you to go to ironworks.media to find more stuff like this. We've got books, we've got podcasts, we've got other videos that we do. We just did a conference and just launched a new book as well, The Desolation of Israel, which maybe I'll try to bring that in next time so that you can take a look at it. But you can also join our mailing list. You can find our 2 free ebooks there, hear about what's coming up. There's a great example of something that we're just trying to build a premier resource network for the Christian church. Is it that right now? No, but let's see how good it can be, and we'd appreciate your help with that. Comment below today. Why don't you tell us in the comment section, what are you going to try to see how far you could go? Pick one aspect of your life, and maybe there's more than one, but just pick one in the comments and say, I'm going to give this my all and see what comes of it. And that really helped the channel as well. Thanks to BGTV for having us on. This has been Difference Makers. Stop making excuses. Stop comparing yourself to other people. Go out there and make a difference.